But first, L.A. County voters will soon decide the fate of Measure M. It's the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's sales tax measure to fund its long-range traffic improvement plan. It would add a half-cent sales tax to the current half-cent allocated to Metro. So 1% of every taxable item you buy would go to transportation. The measure requires two-thirds support for passage. Let's hear the pros and cons with a spokesman for Yes on M, Youssef Robb. Youssef, good to have you with us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Larry.
So just give us, in a nutshell, first of all, why you think it's essential voters support this half-cent sales tax.
Well, I'll boil it down this way. The Los Angeles County population is growing by 2.3 million. And Measure M would add transit, improve our freeways, and fix our local roads, and create jobs to deal with that growth. The alternative is 2.3 million people on our buses, on our trains, on our freeways, and on our roads. And we can watch all of that grind to a halt, along with our economy. We have to be prepared. We have to ease our congestion. We need more jobs. And Measure M is the only way to do it. It delivers a comprehensive traffic improvement plan, whether it's our freeways, whether it's light rail, whether it's subway, whether it's buses. We need this, and we need it now.
The commercials for M claim it would decrease traffic or improve traffic by 15%. But it wasn't clear to me whether that was 15% over projected traffic in the future or 15% improvement versus today.
That number applies to what we're looking at when the projects in this measure are completed. This was a study done by Metro, not by the campaign, and this is the most conservative possible estimate that's possible. It leaves out a full 20% of the measure. It actually only looked at a selected number of projects from the measure. Even still, the fact that we put it in our ads means it's a very meaningful number to people. When the most conservative estimate is a 15% reduction in the traffic we'll see here in Los Angeles County. That's a very meaningful thing for people. It's more time for your families. It gets you home. It gets you to work faster. It gives you time back.
I'm still not quite clear. Is it 15% better, for lack of a better term, than traffic is right now, or 15% better 30 years from now than what it would be then if
Correct.
this plan wasn't implemented?
It's in the future, and it takes into account the large population growth we'll see here
So
in LA
the traffic could even be worse in 30 years, even with M, than it is today because of growth.
And that's why we need to pass Measure M to do what we can to make sure that's not the case. But even if that is the case, we will see a reduction in the time people are spending in traffic, not just in the outlying years, but all the way along. You know, when we extend the Gold Line, for example, along the 210 to Claremont, that's going to take cars and ease congestion off of our freeways. When we extend rail to Torrance in the Green Line, when we extend rail along the 105, along the 405, you know, this is a network that all works together. And so we believe we will see congestion relief in the future, and the experts agree.
We're talking with Youssef Robb, who's with the Yes on M campaign. If you have questions about Measure M on the LA County ballot, you can call 866-893 KPCC 866-893-5722, or you can post a question on the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. Also with us from the No on M Coalition and Executive Director of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, Damien Goodmon. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Larry.
So, Damien, what do you see as the biggest negatives to supporting M?
Well, our organization, the No on M campaign, is composed of a historic alliance of elected officials in the Southeast counties, South Bay counties, working in tandem with transit advocacy organizations, civil rights groups, and some elected officials throughout other parts of the county, like Burbank and in Beverly Hills. And we just all, we've heard what Youssef has said, and we know what the very expensive, paid for by mega-contractors, mega-developer ads on TV are saying, and it's just not the case. The reality is that Measure M would be a permanent half-cent sales tax increase until 2039, increasing to 1 cent from 2039 till forever. And the promises made by the Metro and the Yes on M campaign are simply false. Now, I'm glad you brought up, Larry, the conversation about the 15%. KPCC, LA Times, other people have completely debunked this number. But what Youssef isn't saying, just as he never says on any of the lines that are proposed, are these start dates. decades. That 15% number is a projected number in the year 2057. Now, Larry, I'm a young man, but in 2057, I'll be lucky to still be alive. Most of our listeners won't be alive. And it's a projected number, projected on a basis of all the projects that are promised within Measure M being built. Now, here's what we know. We know that every number of years, and now it's been every 4 years, 2008, 2012, 2016, Metro comes up with a plan and comes to voters and asks for more money. They keep asking for money for the same plans. And Larry, if you take a look at the first sales tax that Metro is getting right now, the half-cent sales tax in 1980, and or the map for the half-cent that Measure C, which was passed in 1990, if you look at the projects on those maps, you see something familiar. You see the exact same projects being proposed today. So my question to Youssef and to voters is, we've given them half-cent sales tax increases 3 times, and still several of the projects are not built. How much will be enough? Will it be a sales tax at 11%? Will it be at 12, at 15, at 20? How much will it be enough before they can actually begin delivering the projects they propose?
Let me ask you, though, what is the alternative? Do you think Metro should have built these things with the revenue that they've already collected? Do you think it's foolish to have such long-range plans for construction of transit projects? What do you think is the better alternative?
Well, that's a big question, so let's unload it first of all. Let's disabuse ourselves of this belief that Metro is this unbiased transportation agency that takes a look at transportation problems and proposes transportation solutions. Metro has proposed in Measure M, and this is largely the reason why low-income communities and communities south of the 10 freeway are opposed to it, a plan that is heavily weighted on the west side in the valley, a plan that's not predicated on traffic or transportation need, but a plan that's based on politics. So when you look at the fact that Metro has compiled, just since R was passed in 2008, over $1 billion in cost overruns, that's a product of them making poor decisions. When you look at the fact that we spent billions of dollars on expanding our transportation system, and yet ridership is down 47% relative to before we began building them, you begin to understand why our traffic night rule remains the same in Los Angeles County. Measure M is not a proposed solution to that. We are not a transportation agency, but we are a group of people who can recognize inequity, who can recognize the bad nature of a blank check, which is what a forever tax is.
On the issue of ridership being down, could that be largely because of low gasoline prices, that we're just in that particular period of history, and that likely in the future that ridership will go up as cost of gas goes up?
That's completely inaccurate. This is not a one-year trend. This is not a 5-year trend. This is a trend that is projected over the last several years. Since before Metro began and the predecessor agencies began building these lines, ridership is down. Estimates are as high as 47% from transportation experts at the University of Southern California. That takes talent, given the fact that our population has increased, our traffic has gotten worse. And the reason is Metro is not building projects based on transportation needs. Metro is building projects based on politics. How else can the fact that we have a proposed permanent half-cent sales tax increase, can Metro say that improvements to the I-5, the I-405, the I-605, the I-710 might take place 40 years from now?
Okay.
Voters need to know that. They need to know the dates that are promised in these projects, and they need to know that Metro's just got a horrible record in delivering projects. They're never on time. They're never on budget. And all you have to do is look at the 405 expansion project.
So it sounds like your alternative would just be that Metro would have to be blown up and something reconstituted to do the projects.
Well, the bottom line is the first rule is you don't reward bad behavior. They're already getting 1.5% of our sales tax in Prop A, passed in 80, Prop C, and Prop 90, and Prop R, which was passed in 2008. So let's first have them make a fair assessment of why, after receiving so much of our sales tax, including state and federal revenue, traffic has worsened. Let's look at the Metro Board composition and find out why. In the composition of Measure M, the projects were heavily weighted to the mayor of Los Angeles, Los Angeles.
Okay, I need to get Youssef back into the conversation. Damien Goodmon of the No on M Coalition. Youssef, Rob?
Yeah, there was a lot there to respond to that's simply not true. Let me tell you about first decade projects here. A new LAX station that ties 3 lines directly to the airport. That's going to make a big difference in the South Bay. It's going to make a big difference on the west side, and it's going to make a big difference along the breadth of the 105 and the full breadth of the 10. I-5 improvements to the 14, Gold Line extension at Claremont, improvements to the Orange Line, the San Fernando Valley, a new 20-mile rail line linking downtown LA to Artesia and connecting all of the southeast cities that Damien is talking about. That is delivered by Measure M. Improvements to the 71, to the 57 and the 60, to the 105, to the 710, not to mention a bike path and LA River plans that extend 50 miles. This is a countywide comprehensive approach. And if you want to talk about politics, let me tell you something. No one has an incentive to add to the gridlock here in Los Angeles County, whether you're a politician, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an average Joe stuck in traffic right now. So there's simply no there. And let me tell you something about the status quo when it comes to Metro. It delivers 1.4 million rides a day in Los Angeles County. It is the third largest transit system in the country, right here in what's known as the car capital of the world. Imagine what traffic would be like without those 1.4 million rides on our buses and our trains. Well, we're looking at 2.3 million more people coming here to the county. And the alternative of blowing Metro up and doing nothing is simply not functional. We need to add transit. We need to add buses and rail. We need rapid bus lines. We need fixed freeways. I'll tell you what happens immediately through Measure M. In the first year, 605 interchanges from the coast all the way to the San Gabriel Valley will be uncorked. That's just one example of the outside of the West Side projects that will happen immediately through Measure M. Not to mention 17% in the beginning and 20% of the revenues moving forward will go to all 88 cities in Los Angeles County and all 134 unincorporated areas for local transportation improvements, whether that's intersections, filling potholes, repaving our roads, or to local transit operators, like La Mirada Bus, Commerce Bus, Norwalk Transit, Long Beach Transit, Gardena Transit, the Beach Cities Transit,
a lot
Torrance
of these
Transit.
have their own,
and that starts
bus
immediately,
services.
a full 20% of the measure, and that is going to make a huge difference in our lives right away. Again, 2.3 million people are coming. We need to do something, and we need to do it now.
Yusef, what do you say, though, to Damien's critique that Metro, the decisions it's made about where to put its lines, where to make its capital investment is really based on political appeasement, not based on where the actual transit needs are greatest. And then when it commissions the projects, it runs into cost overruns on everyone because it's not well managed. Your response to that?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Purple Line extension right now is currently moving faster than projected. The Expo line was finished better than projected. There was a 405 carpool lane that was accelerated a couple years back. So Metro is having a very good track record when it comes down to on time and on budget. And if you look at our current system, it's in the San Gabriel Valley, it's in the Valley, it's in South LA, it's in the West Side, it's down across the 105 where the green line is. It's the blue line from downtown LA through South LA into Long Beach. But it's simply not enough. And that's why we need Measure M to build upon it and extend those lines, and most importantly, to knit them all together. If you want to talk about ridership, again, it's the number 3 system in the country right now. If we build more lines and connect them into a true system, we're going to see ridership explode like we've seen on the Gold Line and Expo Line. We'll
continue with our debate over Measure M. It's a half-cent sales tax L.A. County voters would take on if 2/3 of voters approve the measure, and that funding would go to Metro's long-range transportation plan for the county. Your questions invited, 866-893-KPCC, or you can post them on the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. We continue after a live update from Hetty Lynn Herdes. If you're having lunch with us now, thank you for joining us on AirTalk, taking a break from your day to hear about Measure M on the L.A. County ballot, which would raise the sales tax for county shoppers by a half cent to pay for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's long-term plan for improving transportation in L.A. County. We're hearing the arguments from Yusef Rob in favor of M and Damien Goodmon, who is in opposition to it. We're taking your questions at 866-893-KPCC or the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. Gary in Hawthorne, welcome.
I'd like to know how the project will be gauged or tracked in the future, not just in terms of budget, but in terms of the predictions, like the performance improvements that they're predicting right now. He mentioned 15% and improvement in traffic, and I'm like, how is that tracked, and like, how is that, and how is Metro held accountable to those predictions?
Youssef?
Sure. Well, this has some of the toughest accountability measures we've ever seen in a ballot initiative like this. To get to your point about performance, there will be annual performance and financial audits that will be posted online. Everything will be fully transparent, and Metro's progress reports are public. This is a government agency. The meetings are open. They're broadcast online. You can call a phone number, I believe, and listen to them. So there's public scrutiny, and they're held accountable, and these things will be tracked like they are now, very publicly and very transparently, with the addition of annual performance audits posted online for everyone to see.
Your thoughts on that, Damien Goodmon, about the metrics that are being used here?
Well, Larry, I just feel so much better because this political body that is handing out billions of dollars in contractors and developers who are funding the Yes on Measure M campaign will have reports that will be online. Let's talk about what else is online. The staff reports, the studies. This is something that Youssef is not required to be accountable to because he doesn't work for Metro. He's made the statement that these lines will bring traffic relief. Actually, if you listen, Larry, and you've had the Metro CEO on many times, he never says that. The best, as they say, is it provides you an alternative, and that's because the evidence is in. Metro and Yes on M don't want us to believe our lying eyes. We've given them more money repeatedly over the last 2 decades, since 1980, and traffic has only gotten worse. As far as oversight, the Metro Board has made this Measure M process. They have this quote-unquote independent oversight committee that is appointed by the Metro Board. If they don't like what Metro is doing, Metro can kick them right off the board, drop kick them quite quickly. The bottom line here is that a coalition of cities in the southeast counties, the South Bay counties, elected representatives who collectively represent cities that compose over half the cities that are not in the city of Los Angeles and LA County, are opposed to this plan because there's an absence of equity. They recognize the politics that took place in front-loading and gold-plating projects on the west side and putting projects in the South Bay Southeast. I got to mention this one because he mentioned the West Santa Ana Branch project in the Southeast County. First fact, that plan was proposed in 1980. It is 2016, and it still isn't built. Second thing, the communities of color, the low-income communities that could most use transit, the project in that area is pushed back decades, back into the 2040s, 2050s, despite the fact that when we passed Measure R in 2008, a promise was made to put that project, have it opening by the beginning of 2030. Why? Okay. Because this Metro Board, the mayor of Los Angeles, wanted to front-load projects on the west side.
You said that despite all of Metro's projects, that traffic has gotten worse. But couldn't you make the argument if they didn't have that 1.4 million people a day on Metro's transportation, traffic would be even more gridlocked than it is?
That's not the standard by which you should be evaluating the agency. The other cities in the country have higher transit ridership as a percentage of workforce riders than Metro does. Let's evaluate them as the viewer asked based on the metrics as to what they're promising, the time frames that they'd like to establish them, and the budgets. And if you look at the series of projects, one of the things that Youssef mentioned was the Expo line. Now, the first thing, the Expo line was not created or built by the Metro Board. Because the Metro had proven itself to be incompetent and corrupt, the state legislature established a separate construction authority to build the line. When it was initially proposed, its ridership was projected to be far higher than is today, somewhere around 70 to 80,000 riders. It's nowhere near that. Okay. And the cost of it was to be a fourth of what it ended up being built. So when we're not honest with the voters and yet we come to them and ask them for a blank check like Measure M, we should not be surprised that the results are bad. And that's the history of Metro.
I think the voters can see for themselves on their television screens the wild success of the Expo line since it's extended to Santa Monica and the wild success of the Gold line since it's extended to Azusa. I think there was a story in the Pasadena Star-News either today or yesterday that said ridership on the Gold line is record high. Again, these are lines that parallel freeways, and I don't think the people of Los Angeles County think that 1.4 million rides a day, if those did not exist on the transit system, that there would be less traffic in Los Angeles County. When people are on trains, when people are on buses, traffic is eased. That is a fact. It simply is. And again, we are looking at population increase to the tune of about 2.5 million people, and the alternative of doing nothing would pour 2.5 million more people on the 405, onto our buses, onto our trains, onto the 5, onto the 110, onto the 210, and that will all grind to a halt, as will our economy. Look, the Los Angeles County region weathered the last recession better than other parts of the country. We certainly were hit extremely hard, but we were able to do a little bit better, not just because of our weather, but because we had these transportation projects being built all across Los Angeles County. People were put to work. They had benefits. They were able to support their families. They were able to build career. The Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation, Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, did an independent study on Measure M and found that over its life, it will create 465,000 new jobs across our region. That is going to make a big difference to our economy, especially with 2.3 million people population increase. Those folks are going to need jobs.
Let's talk with Ted in Sherman Oaks. You're on AirTalk.
Thank you. Long-time listener, love your program.
Thanks.
I always am suspect when one of these measures comes on board because I'm in the San Fernando Valley, who has been deemed the orphan of transportation. We have, at any given moment, in the morning, 6 buses running down Ventura Boulevard towards Sepulveda. Those buses are at least 2/3 empty or empty completely. Who runs the route system? Why don't we make better use of it? And secondly, we were sold a bill of goods many years ago about these buses that we're getting. They're monoliths. They hang over the edge of the highway. They block traffic. They go in the fast lanes. It's impossible to drive in the valley some mornings. It takes me almost 30 minutes to get 4 blocks.
Wow.
I would just trust a company that runs this badly. And
Ted,
that's an example of what I see. I hope that I would imagine it's citywide.
Ted, I appreciate your call. Yusef, you want to respond to that?
Well, in terms of San Fernando Valley, there was a headline in an op-ed published in the Daily News this week that said the Valley is getting its fair share. Right now, the Orange Line is one of the most successful rapid bus lines in the nation. It's going to be improved immediately by Measure M with grade separations and other things to help it move faster. And then it's going to convert to rail. You're going to see light rail down Van Nuys Boulevard. You're going to have a transit line from the Valley through the Sepulveda Pass all the way to LAX. You're going to have new connections between the Gold Line, which terminates here in Pasadena, through that part of the valley to the San Fernando Valley. You're going to see improvements near CSUN, which is a huge economic engine. 50,000 students, I believe, is the biggest Cal State in the state. Your caller was right. The San Fernando Valley in the past has been left an orphan. But the reason why Xavier Osofsky and Mike Antonovich and the Valley Industry and Commerce Association support Measure M is because it gets its fair share right now, and that helps the people who live there, and it helps the people who work there. Let me just tell you the way we live, and I think the folks listening know this, and we do too, but it's worth reminding. 50% of people in L.A. County travel to another part of the county to work or play every day. And so it's not just important to look at the line or the freeway improvement that's next to your house. It's where it's going. When we were out in Pomona talking to voters there, they asked questions about the improvements in the 57 and the 60 and the 71, but they also said, what are you doing on the west side? Because we live in Pomona because we take the 10 to Culver City or Santa Monica to work. And so that's the way we live our lives. This is a comprehensive network that takes that into account.
Damien Goodmon, you want to respond to that, particularly the San Fernando Valley critique from Ted?
Oh, well, there's no doubt that if Measure M is passed, that billions of dollars will go toward lining the pockets of mega-contractors and developers to build projects. But the question, as was mentioned by the caller, is whether this investment of funds is going to result in traffic improvements, a reduction in people's commute times. You have mentioned the Expo line. I guess those of us who are caught on the I-10 every day aren't supposed to believe our daily experience. The line is built. The line was late, several years late. The line was over budget. The ridership projections based on what was initially proposed before a shovel was put in the ground is significantly lower, and yet traffic is worse on the 10 freeway. And let's be clear about the plan, because we often in these conversations ignore timelines and time frames. I thought it was atrocious back when we were discussing Proposition R, that no one was saying that subway toward the sea, which was the headliner project, wouldn't open to Westwood until 2030 something. We waited until after taxpayers voted for it to inform the public about it. Many of the projects that are being proposed in the Southeast and South Bay counties are proposed, both highway projects and transit projects, are proposed to be on the latter end of the transit plan. Now, if Metro has to come back to us just just 8 years after we passed Measure R in 2008, and asked for more money to complete the system, many of the lines that were proposed in 2008, what is the estimation of how many more in tax increases we would have to get to before we finally got to the projects that are in the South Bay and the Southeast, which are proposed to be built in 2040, 2050, 2060? Larry, I just think it's irresponsible, and many of our coalition partners think it's irresponsible to promise people projects that are so far in the future, yet having them begin paying for them on day one, especially given Metro's track record of making promises for these projects and never delivering them. A 405 Pass project has been proposed going back to 1980, and the first has-said sales tax increase. It doesn't exist. Yet today, it's in Measure M as I kid you not, $10 billion project. It's a boondoggle if you've ever heard of one, and it's at a major cost where the only people who will benefit are the major contractors and developers who are funding the Yes on M campaign.
Damien Goodmon of the No on M Coalition, Executive Director of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, thank you for being with us and talking about your opposition to M. I appreciate it. Yousef Robb, quick final word to county voters from you.
Yeah, again, look at your daily experience and ask yourselves, would traffic on the 10 be better or worse without a light rail line running along with it? With 2.3 million people coming to our county, if we don't add transit or fix our freeways, what is the disaster that will result? That's what Measure M is all about. Let's turn out and vote for Measure M on Election Day, November 8th.
All right. Yousef Robb of the Yes on M campaign. Reminder tonight, coming up at our Crawford Family Forum at 7 o'clock. We're doing an event sold out, but you can see it at kpcc.org, the video stream. It's the voter cram session. We'll take you through all of the state ballot measures all the way through tonight at 7 o'clock, and you'll hear it tomorrow at noon right here on 89.3 KPCC.